Hi, Vinayak. Yeah,
Hi, good
good
evening.
evening. Good evening. I don't know. There was some problem with the dashboard, so they were showing multiple classes when at this point of time I don't have multiple classes at this time. So yeah, I was on
Yeah,
the other tab. Uh, so today we'll start with the basic of class 12, which is we finished demand supply. So
hmm.
what we'll do is towards the
Factors
end,
of
once we
production.
yeah. What
Uh,
the idea is, because you've done demand and supply a few months back, there's no point again going through it again. And last week we had the revision session, so
yeah,
I know that you know quite a bit, so we don't need to again go through it. It'll just be a waste of time, to be honest and to be blunt. Uh, so we'll start from production. So an essential bit about production is why we are not going right into production function and law of proportional variables and all of that. Why we're not starting directly with that is because production in itself, in an economic term, in an economic sense altogether, is linked to the factors of production. Without the factors of production, you wouldn't have any production. That's why you have the term factors of production. That's why if you look at the English language, it sort of says factors of production because without it, any sort of production would not be possible. So, what is the economic term of production? So, simply put, production is nothing but producing something. Now, that means so that doesn't mean that humans can produce things. Uh, Basic law of physics: humans cannot produce matter. They cannot produce new sort of things. You cannot produce land. You cannot produce you cannot produce water. You cannot do that. You can find ways to transform it, ways to recreate it in different forms, but as per even physics, you cannot humans or any sort of living beings cannot create any sort of matter. So what production therefore means is that you're taking that same matter and you're retransforming that matter into elements or into forms that have some form of utility, or in that sense have utility and can be used for the purpose of consumption. So that is what in economics production means. You take things like raw materials and you transform them into factors that can be used. So for example, think of a chair and a table. What So a chair and a table, you do not get a chair and a table in nature. You do not find a chair and a table just in some forest somewhere. Um, so a chair and table is not created in its form directly in the way that we see it. The reason the chair and table look in that way is because it has been transformed to be useful. So a person needs a chair to sit, or a person needs a table to keep things, or while studying or working on the laptop or a PC, you need a chair and table for that. Or you need a bed to sit on your bed and work on your laptop. So, in that sense, that itself, that usage of sitting on the chair and using the laptop or studying by sitting on the table and sitting on a chair and placing your study material on the table, that itself is utility. That itself is consumption. Of course, you're not directly consuming it, but you're using these elements in a way that creates a need of consumption, or do you derive consumption from it. So that's nothing. That is exactly what production is about. Because if you look at the chair and the table, before it was created in that form, it was, in a sense, it was what it was. It was wood. Basically, it was trees. So we cut down trees. In case it was wooden chair and table, we cut down trees and we carved it into a fashion, into a table or a chair, so that people could sit and use it and have find some utility out of it. If the chair has elements of wood, also it has elements of metal, then we've extracted the metal resource, the iron ore and the copper ore, and we smelted it together to create metallic structures that we can use to add into the table. Why? Because we do not have utility from the iron ore and copper ore, which is found naturally in the environment, but we have utility from the process, from the products that we get by smelting it in a furnace and then adding it onto a table. So essentially, production in itself is this entire complicated process. So, for example, if you look at food, an onion is useful. You can consume an onion, but if you add the onion with other vegetables or other sort of into chicken or fish or beef, uh, you can consume a lot more. It will have a more nutritional value. So that entire thing is production. And today, much, even if we look at a national level, even if we look at GDP or GNP, what does that consume? What does that consist of? GDP and GNP consists nothing but the production value of a country, of a district, of a state. Uh, how many goods and services are produced in a period of 1 year? That's added in. How much was exported? How much was imported? Minus that out, plus that out. Is it a deficit? Is it a surplus? Accordingly, we'll add. So everything that we produce, everything that the GDP consists of, is nothing but the production of goods and services in a period of 1 year. And therefore, you have, because of production values of different countries or districts or areas, you therefore have different degrees of development or different degrees of advancement that are placed on specific places. For example, if USA produces more than us, in which they do, um, then they are more economically developed than us, and we produce more than Bangladesh, Pakistan, or Nepal. So we are more ahead of them. China produces more than us. So everything in today in GDP, everything GNP is all taken in the production sense. So that's why it misses out on different factors when you're looking at it. But when you're looking at production, a lot of countries consider this as a factor. So you need certain factors to facilitate this production process. So, for example, um, let's take the table and chair example. You go to the forest, you cut the wood, but that wood is useless to you. It's useless to me because it's not transformed into a state that I can utilize or I can find utility towards. Uh, so the end objective, my end objective of going to the forest and getting the wood is to transform it into a shape or a form that creates or you can derive utility from it.
So for that, you
So
need a skilled individual.
you need a skilled individual. So your first person you'll need is an entrepreneur who knows how to carve the wood, who knows no, you need an entrepreneur. Okay, you need person with skills, and the second person you'll need is a person who will do the carving for you. So that person ends up being your laborer or your person who will work for you, your employee, who has the skills or the years of training to actually take 3 or 4 big logs of wood and transform that into a plank that can be used as the head of the table. You'll need someone who's good at smelting copper ore and iron ore to create the metallic objects or the metallic portions that hold that plank. Like, so for example, if you see a table, there'll be a wooden top, and holding that wooden top or that plank up will be a metal structure. So in case you put weight on that, it's supposed to hold. that weight. So you need something strong. So you'll need another person who has knowledge of smelting and who has knowledge of creating these structures that can hold weight, who knows how much weight this sort of plank will hold. Accordingly, I have to smelt this much amount of copper or iron ore, and then create the steel, and then using molten structures. So if you've seen a glass factory, if you've seen how glass is manufactured, glass actually, now when you look at it, it looks glass comes in different shapes. But actually, it's not in that form. So the way that they actually shape it is that they first heat up the glass to around 1,500 degrees until it becomes molten. Then they attach that molten structure to a pipe, and then accordingly, people who are skilled in making those glass structures, making those shapes, they actually blow into that pipe, and then accordingly, according to how much breath they push in, they'll sort of shape uh, that molten structure. So as they blow, that molten structure is being shaped into the form that they want. So if it's a wine glass, it has to be straight, and then it has to open up like that. So then they have to make that shape. If it is a beer glass, then it has to be big and circular and huge. So accordingly, they know the skills. So based on that skills, you need a laborer who's specialized in doing that. So you need two people. Also, you will need the third thing that you'll need is a location where that is possible. One way is that you could do it from your house, but then you're owning that land. Or the other thing is you can actually rent out a place, a factory, or a small factory where you can do the activity of making tables, chairs, or glass-based products. Uh, but also for that, yeah, so you'll need land for that. Then you have to ensure that that land has water capacity, it has some sort of water in case there is any fire accidents, or in case you need to cool down certain substances, especially in a glass factory or a steel factory, that's metal factory. It's required that you need to have some sort of water source with you in case to cool down certain objects, or in case a fire breaks out, you need to have some sort of water source with you. So all that you need. So all that will come under land and where you're starting your operation. You'll need an entrepreneur. Why? Essentially run the business, to find people, to find appropriate markets, to take risks, essentially to take risks and to innovate and to find easier ways to sort of either reduce the cost of production or to make the production process faster. So a very strong entrepreneur that comes to my mind when I say entrepreneur is Henry Ford. And if you know Henry Ford's story, you'll know that he looked at the production process and he came up with the concept of the conveyor belt, which is basically which basically made the production process a lot faster. So what he essentially did is he built a belt, and accordingly, and that was known as the assembly line. And where the product moves till the end till the end of the assembly line, till that portion, a lot of different activities can be completed within that short time period. So for example, if you look at how laptops are essentially manufactured, uh, you'll have a you'll have a conveyor belt, you'll have an assembly line. But at the start of the assembly line, there'll be one place that's dedicated to printing out the components for the motherboard. The second part on the mother, so you'll have the motherboard. So the first part would be just print out the different places or the different components, such as the RAM, such as the processor, the hard disk, and all of these parts would sort of, especially the motherboard, and on the motherboard with the RAM, with the processor, where all those components would sort of fit in. So once that printing is done, we'll go on to the next stage, where you'll have those specific parts being soldered on by a machine or by a person. Now I'll deal with the machine because the machine is more efficient. Once that's done, then the third stage comes where they actually check if each component is in its right place. And then the fourth is where that entire thing is then put on the fourth part. Any once if the check is done, it's hand checked, and the fourth section inspection checked by a semi-skilled or a skilled laborer who knows how motherboard looks. And then once that's done, then it goes on to the area where the actual the outerwear of the laptop, that's the keyboard, the glass screen, where that is being manufactured, or that is where that is being set up by a set of people, and that's when they put in the motherboard. So this entire conveyor line was created by Henry Ford for his car company, and Ford Motors, of course. And he found a way to actually build the car faster with a lot more with a lot more efficiency and reduce production costs, because he was using less and less number of people to make the same car. So you need an entrepreneur who knows where the markets are, to know where the buyers are, to efficiently innovate from time to time, and all of that. Um, and also to take risks. Essentially, to take risks. Know that, okay, there is a new market over here. So how do we expand into the market? To do market research, to find out the risks, to bring in investors. Because the risk is that if you do not do well, you'll essentially lose all your money. Fourth and the final one is you cannot just go to the forest and cut down trees and just take people to make things. You cannot just take in laborers, tell them to make it. Of course, the laborers that are there, they'll need some sort of assurance that for their hard work, for their work of making the carving out the wood, or making the metals, or making the laptop, or making the car, or different components of the car, they will want to be paid for that, in a certain sense. They will want to be paid some amount of money to keep coming every day, to keep working, and to take care of their families. And essentially, what you need, therefore, is some sort of capital. Of production, because you need that allow you to operate, pay off your employees, and to advertise and sell your products. You need money for that. Also, you need money for machines, you need money for tools, you need money for all of these things. But you need to buy all that. So you need investment, you need capital. So that sort of flow, that concept, those investments, that essentially, and your own personal income or your own personal investment, that essentially becomes your capital, from which you're buying the machines, you're paying off your people who are working on different products, on the production of different products. So all of that comes from the fourth and final factor of production, which is capital. Now we'll sort of get into a more detailed idea of what these are. Just give me 1 minute. Yeah. So as I said, production is nothing but an organized activity of transforming resources into finished products. So if you remember, uh, it's a very the one of the most important sayings of economics is the resources are limited, but the wants are unlimited. So you have resources, you have your different ores for the creation of metals and metal products. You have wood for the creation of paper, wooden products, tables, chairs, furniture, all of those things. Um, and you have you have different sort of yeah. So you have different sort of what do you say? Um, yeah, you have these. You have coal for the generation of electricity. All of these things. You have crude oil for the creation of petrol and diesel. But
all these
yeah,
non-renewable resources.
yeah.
Uh,
But the point that yeah, go ahead.
so, what was the word you are saying that we use?
Yeah. So what we are using is essentially resources. Even if you look at crude oil, if you even look at ores, these are all non-renewable. Yes, at one point they're going to end. Even wood, even if we just keep on cutting trees, essentially just going to end up losing a lot of wildlife, a lot of natural habitation, and um, wood essentially in paper and all that. Um, so yeah, these are resources, but in a sense, in that original sense, you cannot put crude oil into your car and expect it to run. You need to transform it into petrol and diesel according to what your car runs on, and then put once that conversion is complete, only then you have utility from that. If you put crude oil, you'll just damage your car. Essentially, you'll just make your car engine spoil, or you'll spoil something. It'll cost you a lot more to fix it. So that crude oil in a sense has no utility. So you have to transform. So that production process of transforming the crude oil into petrol or diesel depending on the car, that in itself is production. And the objective of production is to satisfy the demand of such resources. So the demand for petrol, the demand for diesel, buy more cars, use more vehicles, and they'll keep on buying it because the car companies want to see that there is a demand. So they'll keep on manufacturing, and more people will keep on buying, and therefore the demand for petrol, the demand for cars, the demand for diesel, they'll keep on going up, and therefore these petroleum companies, OPEC, and all of these people, they know that okay, people need fuel, the people need crude oil, people need petrol and diesel. So they'll sell it to us. Either they sell the crude oil and we transform it into petrol or diesel, or they sell us petrol and diesel and we give it out, distribute it to the people who need it. Uh, so production is nothing but that ability to transform it into a form that people use it. Um, so at the end of the day, as I said, a country's economic structure or an economic value is essentially determined by the amount of production that is there in that specific country. So US's economic value will be much more higher than India's, and India's will be much more higher than Bangladesh, respectively. So production could also include uh, changing the form, place, availability, and usage of personal skills. So what do you think this statement means? We've already discussed form, but what does place and availability and usage of personal skills mean?
These are the conditions required for a profitable production of of a complete good or something. As we discussed
Um,
about a chair and table, that
yeah,
if that table is made of some is made with some metallic decorations or metallic holdings, so it would require a person who who would smelt the metal into the table.
yeah, that's true. That is form. That is form. That's the first one. Uh, you also have production can also include form. That is changing a table of wood into a table and creating a metal structure that holds up the table. But also you have place, availability, and usage of personal skills. So what does that mean?
Yeah, the place. In case of place, we can say that in construction sites, the entrepreneurs mostly choose places from where they can get cement and sand and other materials for building materials and like that. So,
Yeah,
so if the
yeah,
so if the transport costs are less, then it would be much more profitable for them. And same goes for skills, as we know the division of labor and like that. Uh, I mean, the more skilled the labor is, the more efficient the production process would be.
yeah. You're somewhere you're around, yeah, around the right place. But
Okay.
also, see, place could also mean, uh, for example, if you're working in the real estate market, you know that okay, this area of the city is now developing. And generally you see this with cities. You see, when cities are, if you go 100 years back, you'll see Kolkata was a lot much smaller than what it is now. Today
Yeah.
you go to Kolkata again, you'll see new places like Salt Lake City, or
Mm.
you'll see
New
places outside
Town,
Salt.
Kandahar,
Yeah,
all those places. Yeah.
all these places are now developing. So you know, as a real estate person, okay, now people are going to demand houses there because places within the city are becoming expensive because they are within the city. So you'll move your construction business over there, and then you'll contact cement factories over there, and you'll say you come here and we'll help you, we'll give you also money. And so that itself is changing the place of production of building houses purposely over there, because you know that the demand is going to rise over there, and the demand is constantly rising.
Yeah.
Availability, a very simple example, availability. So for example, if you look at mangoes, mangoes are only available in the summer months, starting from April till June, and mostly like they start from March end or middle of March, and they they are there till end of June or something. So those are fresh mangoes that are grown and that are only available at that point of year.
I
But
have to
you'll
ask
also,
one thing. I have to
yeah.
ask one thing. If the in in real estate business, if the price of that new region is increasing, doesn't it imply that the old region which was once more popular than the latest one, its price should decrease? But I don't think that is the case here.
I didn't get your point. I think so. Your voice broke. I didn't hear the entire thing. So could you repeat what you were saying?
Okay, I'm just saying that
Yeah.
this newly created new town, yeah.
Hmm.
So now it should be like Salt Lake houses should cost less than that of New Town, because New Town is the uprising development area which is occurring in West Bengal, Kolkata. That, but it seems that the prices of houses in Salt Lake is not decreasing. They're all matlab, I'm just meaning to say that they're competing with the prices of the houses of New Town. It's not like that one place's
Yeah.
price is increasing and one place's price continues goes on and increasing and increasing.
Yeah. So very one simple reason as to why that happens is because, for example, if you go to Shakespeare Sarani Road at any point and you want to look, of course, that's more of a business place in downtown Kolkata. But in case you want to buy a house over there, it's going to cost you a lot more than going to that new area that's being developed.
Uh,
Even Salt Lake will cost you more than that new area, but lesser than Shakespeare Sarani. Why? Because these places, like areas like Shakespeare Sarani Road, all of these places are older parts of Kolkata. And generally, if you go to any city, even if it's Bombay, you go to South Bombay, those houses will be very expensive. It'll cost you not less than 40 crores if you're 30 35 crores if you want to buy a 1 BHK or a 2 BHK. But if you go to Borivali, which is like north, in the complete opposite end, you'll get a house, the same house, within a crore of rupees. Why is that happening? Because South Bombay and these places are essentially older cities and like have been developed over a period of time. And because it's older, because it's more closer to the main offices, to the main government or buildings. So in case you have some, if you want to go to some major big government office or the RBI office or the Tatas also have their headquarters in this really old building in South Bombay, which was their original, the founding building. It's still there today. If you want to go, if you're working over there, uh, all of those places are really close by, and that's with every, around the world. If you see, in every major downtown area, New York, even downtown, if you're looking for a house where all the major companies or all the major government buildings are, it will be very expensive. So a lot of American families then rather deciding of living rather than living in downtown, they live in suburbs, which are essentially Brooklyn, which is outside the New York area completely. So they take the subway, which is a lot cheaper. It's like the Delhi metro. You just live outside Delhi, little bit outside Delhi rather than living in the center of Delhi, which is where all the Lok Sabha and the Parliament and Racecourse Road, where the Prime Minister lives. So instead of living there, which would cost you a lot of money, it's better to live outside because these are older areas, and with as old the older they get a historical value, and therefore that historical value is more and more expensive. So, for example, there was this recent Amitabh Bachchan Ayushman Khurrana movie which came out on Prime, I think so, a year back or so, where both
Sitabo
of them,
Gulabo और गुलाबो
yeah.
सिताबो बहुत बड़ी.
So why were all of these people interested in that old house? Because it was old, and because it is so old, it's going to be very expensive. So anyone who gets the house will be very rich, and all the furniture also itself was antique furniture. So it like the more the city expands, the more people that's sort of the real estate business. The more the city expands, more people will start living outside because it's more cheaper, and then move on a day-to-day basis using public transport or private transport if they have the money to go for work and come go to school or something like that. So that is the real estate market. Availability, as I was saying, is if you go to, like, for example, mangoes, as I said, grow only in the summer, but you'll see in ice cream shops or in restaurants, you'll see that you have mango milkshake, you have mango ice cream all throughout the year. Why? Because you have a lot of people who may like a certain flavor of a mango, uh, and who want to have mango ice cream or mango milkshake or mango juice, all of that thing. So you need to keep, there is therefore that demand, and because they like it, there is utility for them. So what you do is create, you take mangoes, you create preservatives from it, and you use those preservatives to actually create these products throughout the year until the next summer comes, and then you can use more and more mangoes. So throughout the year, you have this entire process going on where you create the availability for certain products which may not be available throughout the year. So that is a production also includes that talks about availability. Usage of personal skills is more of a service oriented thing. So for example, if in your house the sink in your bathroom suddenly stops working, you need someone to come and fix it. So that personal, unless you know plumbing, you need to hire a plumber to come and see what's happening, fix the sink, and go. Uh, if you want to go to somewhere in the town, and you're not finding public transport, so you need a taxi. So you'll book an Uber or an Ola. So that itself is again a usage of personal skills. But this is why is it related to production? Because at the end of the day, even these services such as taxis, Uber and Ola, or any taxi service, they also get added into the GDP or GNP because there is an exchange of money between both parties. One is you and the company itself. Uh, and the personal skills that you're using are that of the driver, the Uber driver who's coming to your house, picking you up, and driving you safely to your destination where you want to go. So that itself is a personal skill. Why is it in the production process? Because there is an exchange of money, and that is being reflected in the GDP as a service. So that's why if you look at GDP's definition, aggregate value or a total value of total goods and services manufactured in a period of 1 year, 1 financial year. So that itself is a production process because it's a service. So that is the fundamental idea of transforming a certain good or service, adding it, and thereby creating a utility, which then leads to consumption. So consumption could mean also moving from one place to the other. It also could mean taking grains of wheat and then putting it through that grinder and making flour and then transforming that flour to make chapatis or bread. So that essentially that also could be consumption, and the transformation of form is taking place because the farmer is taking seeds, sowing the seeds in his field, allowing the crops to grow, harvesting it, selling it to people, and those people are then grinding it. So if you go to Ashirwad, they'll grind it for you and they'll give it to you. Some people buy the grains itself and then grind it themselves. Choice is yours actually, but that entire transformation of value of grinding it into flour and then kneading it into dough and then using that dough to either create rotis or chapatis or then bread, that entire thing is a production process where you're adding utility because you cannot eat the grains directly. You need to transform it into some sort of form, that is bread or chapatis, then you can consume it and derive utility from it. So that's what production is. Uh, so as I said, before this entire process happens, um, you need certain factors of production. Uh, so yeah, one more thing I have to just go through it. So I think so that is there in labor. So yeah, so good or service is to transform through many stages or hands until it reaches the consumer in its final form. So for example, the entire process of constructing a table. The consumer demands a table and a chair. He's going to pepper fry or I don't know, IKEA or any sort of furniture store, and they buy wood and say you build it yourself. They have to do that for you. So they will use their own laborers. They will use their own production process. They will use their own factories and they will use their own capital and entrepreneurs to create different forms of tables. They may create a smaller table, a big table, uh, depending on what the person is demanding, and give it to you in that form. So you pay for the final product, you pay for all the factors of production, you pay for the rent, certain percentage of the rent, you pay for the certain percentage of the salary of the person, of the laborer, you pay a certain percentage of salary for the entrepreneur, and you pay a certain percentage of amount to the manufacturer who's the owner, which he adds into the capital, and he uses that to either invest in another business if he has that much amount of money remaining with him, or he can use it to manufacture more furniture to sell to more people. Either way, uh, you're paying for it because you have some utility from it, from the final form of the table or the chair. So all of these things are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship are all factors of production. So land, in an economic sense, does not refer to a patch of land that you may come across. Uh, so if you go to any land, any piece of land, economics will not consider it only completely as land. Land in itself needs different sort of factors also within it to be considered as land. So I'll tell you what. So for example, if you're at a farm, yeah, if you're a farmer, a barren piece of land is of no use to the farmer because it essentially cannot grow anything. So economics, in that sense, economic theory would not consider that barren piece of land as land. Uh, Another problem that comes up is the supply of land is fixed. So as I said, humans cannot create more and more land. Amount of land in a certain area is fixed. Around the earth is fixed. So I think so. It was 98% water and 2% land or something. That's the proportion of land and water on earth. That So we cannot create more than 2% unless the water level suddenly drop, and I don't think so that will happen. But till now, supply of land is fixed. Humans cannot create more land. Of course, we humans are very ingenious, and They've created islands and all of that from land. That is harmful to the environment. But to a certain sense, they can create some amount of land, but not a lot, or not so much. Uh, so what does so if you're a farmer, you're looking at a barren piece of land, economics would not consider it as land. For that barren land to actually be land, it has to have good soil quality to allow for the growth of plants. It has to have a good irrigation source. So that needs to be some sort of water body nearby for the irrigation of the crops to allow constant growth. Third, some natural vegetation. So, for example, you must have come across this term of multi-cropping, where alongside your rice, your wheat, you also grow small amount of herbs or vegetables. What that essentially does is you try to create some indigenous vegetables or herbs. What that does, it sort of maintains the stability of the soil for a long-term growth. So you need some sort of natural vegetation like that to ensure that the quality of the soil, nutrients of the soil do not get depleted. Uh, so that's you need all of these things to allow that production process, because if the land is barren, you cannot grow anything. You wouldn't be able to create farm products. You won't be able to produce agricultural products to sell in the market from which people get utility. uh, so yeah, so that is why land in an economic sense refers to all of these things, and they need to be there for it to be considered as land actually. So there's this very famous economist, and if you study economics at a degree level, you'll get to know him. He had a theory of rent, David Ricardo's theory of rent. We won't get into that now, but he wrote on land, especially as a factor of production, and he says that land in itself is indestructible. Cannot be destroyed. The quality of land may get depleted. So if you keep on growing the same crop again and again, it's going to deplete certain nutrients from the soil. And over a long period of time, you'll see that the yield of that crop is dropping. That means that the quality is degenerating. So you need to regenerate that. So you need to shift to another sort of crop and then allow those nutrients to grow back slowly over a period of time. So Ricardo therefore said that land in itself is indestructible. Quality may drop, but it will over a period of time regenerate. Another thing is land cannot be moved from one place to the other. Labor can. Laborers can move from one place to the other, but land itself cannot. So, for example,
So these were all the
in
characteristics of
Maharashtra,
we're discussing
yeah,
right now.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. These are the different characteristics. So,
Okay.
for example, laborers, I remember these stories, I think so, when I was in school, where there was this big roar by Shiv Sena saying that why are UP and Bihar laborers from these states coming into Maharashtra and stealing the Maharashtrian jobs, um, which which is completely an ideological, political value that they're trying to push. But what the point I'm trying to make is that laborers from UP, Bihar, from the Sindhi belt itself are moving from their hometowns to different states in search of work. And that itself is what labor itself is mobile. That means they can move from one place to the other. Land, you cannot move land from one place to the other. Land is fixed in that place. You can move yourself to another piece of land and work there, but you cannot move that same piece of land from that place to the next. The second one is labor. Labor. So labor is essentially a what? Labor is any sacrifice of body or mind. Body or mind basically means body means any sort of physical activity. So where you're physically working in a factory. So that's you're using your body. You're sacrificing your body for a certain activity or a certain creation of a certain product. Mind refer to, okay, how do I make this production process faster? Where do I attach the screws to ensure that this thing works properly? So, for example, a mobile phone. Where do I attach the battery? Where do I attach the speakers? Where do I attach the headphone jack? All of these things require so a certain level of thinking for the users, for the persons, for the consumers use. What would be more comfortable for the consumer? Should the speakers be at the top or at the bottom of the phone? Where should the logo be? So the entire thing of putting the iPhone Apple logo at the back of the iPhone is to show that, okay, this from far off you can see, okay, that person is using an iPhone. That's the idea of putting the Apple logo at the back. And
To
this
take mirror
consumers
selfie.
also, yeah, in the mirror selfie to show that I'm using an iPhone. That's what the people, also entrepreneurs also thought, okay, people like that, so you'll put it at the back. uh, and even consumers like that, because you have these iPhone cases at the back where there's a hole in the middle at the back of the phone so that logo can be seen. So no one wants to hide that logo. So this entire thing of deciding where to put what, that is a certain thinking of the consumer's mindset, your mindset, how the phone stability, look at the phone stability. So all of that requires a
Yeah,
certain
same for the laptop, I
sacrifice
guess.
of, yeah,
Like
same for the
the
laptop.
Dell Alienware. Oh my god, that laptop is so good.
Yeah, so again those laptops are made to manufacture, so unless you pay for it, they're not going to make it for you, so you'll never find.
Yeah,
If you actually go to the Dell website, you cannot like add to cart and buy it. You have to like call them, then they'll do all that process and then they'll send it to you, because it's
those
a
are
very expensive
customizable.
laptop. It is customizable. You can determine how much RAM you want, how much amount of hard disk drive space you want, what processor you want. All of that you can decide. Like the basic structure is fixed, like where the speakers would come, where the two fans should be set up. But then the internal specifications, depending on what you game and what your gaming capacity is, what you do with it,
Acha, I
depending on
see.
that,
Instead of
yeah,
giving an option, we can give them our suggestions to them. Okay, I see.
yeah. But then again, you also have it in, so there's some origin PCs or something. They only function in US. I don't think so they're anywhere else. They custom build your laptop. So you have to tell them the specifications, and then they will come to your house. They will build it in front of you, and then they'll start it off with you. So a lot of gamers also are now using origin laptops or origin PCs. Yeah. So
I see.
So this entire process of body and mind, where you send one person, a technical person, to your house to build the laptop, and that person will know where everything goes, and he will take 2 3 hours to build it, but he'll build it and he'll give it to you. Um, so that itself, that entire process, that itself is labor. Uh, uh, so undergone partly or wholly with a view to secure income. So why is that person coming to your house and building it for you? Because he has been guaranteed by the employer through contract that if you work, we'll pay you this much amount of money per month. But for that money to reach your account, you have to do all these responsibilities that are present in the job description. So whenever in the future you're applying for a job, you'll see that in the application or in the description there'll be something known as job description, which essentially entails what you have to do under that role. So based on that, you get some income. But a problem within the definition of economics is this part: undergone partly or wholly with a view to secure an income apart from pleasure derived directly from the work is termed as labor. So, apart from pleasure derived directly from work is termed as labor, is one of the reasons why you see housewives or domestic work is never monetized. So, if you see, the government doesn't pay you, or any car companies or corporations do not pay you for to do your household chores, or to do what Steve, especially household chores or cleaning your house. You can employ people to do that, but then if you're doing it yourself and in your home, that will not be considered as labor, uh, even though it requires sacrifice of body and mind. Why? Because economics and corporations and economics theory, they all consider that as pleasure, that you're cleaning your house because you like your house clean. That is why you're doing it. So you do not need to give them, you do not need to pay people to do that.
So
So
doesn't it
again,
mean that
human
cleaning
yeah.
your own cities is just to satisfy yourself, to make your to keep your city clean instead of paying them, instead of declaring
Yeah,
them
that
as
is
government jobs? But that is not the mindset here.
essentially the mindset everywhere, that if you're cleaning any place, you're cleaning the park, you're cleaning the river, you're cleaning your own house, you're
Hmm.
doing it because you're a volunteer, you're a person who's come willingly because you like cleaning things. That is why you're come, that is why you're come here. And therefore your sacrifice of your body or mind during that period of time which is happening is not considered as labor, because you're doing it for pleasure, uh, for a certain sense of satisfaction.
Oh,
So that is why there's a problem with economics theory. And I believe that even any that sort of work also should be monetized, and people should be paid for even cleaning your house or staying at home and just doing that. And Finland's government is actually paying people for doing that, and New Zealand's government is planning to also do that in the next this year. So they recently also increased the tax
what tax?
on corporations and companies, and they made it $30 now, so per day.
Oh,
So essentially, they are yeah. So these things are being recognized now. So over a period of time, next 30 or 40 years, India will take time. Uh, we will also have labor will be paid for household work essentially over in the near future or in the coming future.
before then
So
India will become a
one
deep
thing,
capitalist economy.
it will by then it will become more capitalist than it is what it is now. Uh, Labor is perishable. What does that mean? That means if you do not turn up for work, uh, you cannot recover that labor at all. So if you don't turn up for work, if you're working in a factory, you don't turn up for work, they'll cut money from your salary. Because why will your employer cut your salary because you're not turning up? Because that labor that the employer lost by you not coming in from work cannot be recovered in any sense. You can come in and do that work, that same work that you were supposed to do when you were absent, but then you'll just be consuming an extra day. And let's just say that you turned up and you weren't absent on that day and you finished that work. You could get ahead on some additional work. Uh, but because you are absent, you have to finish the work that you missed out because you were absent. So labor in itself is perishable. If you do not turn up, that labor will be lost. Same thing with people who are employed on a day-to-day basis. If they do not get employed on that day, the employers also lose out on that labor. They also lose out on getting income, and their labor, that day's labor, cannot be recovered in any sense unless they find some other sort of economic activity on the same day. Last point, one of the last points is uh, labor is inseparable. So you cannot remove that work, that sacrifice of body or mind, or that physical work, or that intellectual thinking sort of process from the laborer. You cannot separate them out. If you want that person to use their physical body to produce something or produce a certain good or service, or you need their mind to think about ways to market your product, you need to hire that person. You cannot extract that information from his head and then use it, push your production process, and not pay that person. You need that person. So that is why labor is inseparable. It implies that the laborer retains his or her capacity to work. You can see this with a lot of freelance workers. Essentially, what do freelancers do? They know that they are skilled. They know that they know how to. So for example, video editing and audio editing, which is done for movies. So if you see any sort of movie, you'll see that there are multiple cameras around an actor and actress. But when the final movie comes out, you'll see it at different cuts. So, for example, if there are two people talking, actor A starts talking to actress A. So, there'll be multiple cameras across these two people, and they'll be talking. But when you're looking at the film, you'll see that when actor A is talking to actress A, there'll be a close up shot of him talking, or when actress A is talking to actor B, there'll be a close shot of her talking to him. How is that possible? Because of video editing. Because you take the entire recorded footage and you cut it using softwares like Apple has their I think Windows has Adobe Premiere Pro. Apple has some I think so some Final Cut Pro or something. You have these video editing softwares where you take the entire footage and you cut it in the form that you want. And a lot of freelancers are hired for that purpose because they know they're good, and you have to pay them for their work. So you cannot extract that training that they've got and think that okay, I can do it. If you're not skilled at editing and audio editing and video editing, you need to hire those people to do that job. I need this advertisement cut down to this much. I need these set of this scene in this movie cut down, edited and sent to me, etc., etc. So for that, you need to hire people, and that is why the laborer is inseparable from his or her capacity to work. So labor power is varied. So for example, if you see in many factories, you will have specialization where different laborers are tasked with a specific job that they do, and that's the only job that they do throughout the day. So there'll be only one person who'll be setting up this and connecting the upper section, is the screen of the laptop, with the webcam, or with the connecting that upper part to the hinges of the lower part. Person doing that job, while you have another person installing the battery or other hardware components that may not be there in the motherboard. So depending how specialized that person is, you have different varying levels of what laborer is termed. So skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled. So unskilled is completely not completely, but of the production process. So they can do any sort of, they basically do menial jobs. They may do menial jobs